Yes, you heard that right. Reaching 1000 ELO in chess is actually easy, and I'm going to prove it to you. I've even researched some of my old games when I was at 1000 ELO, so I hope you learn a lot. So let's immediately dive into the first game and the first rule I have for you today. The first rule is to just not blunder, because at 1000 ELO, literally every single game is decided by a blunder, and this game executes that perfectly, as you will see. So let's start. So it's a basic opening, and a lot of trades immediately happen, and the situation is starting to get complicated. Both players try to develop their pieces and to castle. Another trade is happening, and now you see we're getting closer and closer to the devastating point. I bring my rook into the game, try to attack the pawn for some whatever reason, I don't know. And now he's going with his knight even deeper into my position and attacking here. And as I see the knight, what does every single 1000 do? Attack the knight. And what does my opponent do? Just not check if it is protected and attack my rook. So easy to take a knight, and with this, the game is over. As you can see, I'm trying to promote the pawn, getting the rook, a little bit of shuffling, taking the last pawn, and with that, the game is over. So, how do we prevent ourselves from blundering now? The most important thing is to always check the pieces. And what is the most important piece? Right, the king. So, let's check the king first. Is the king safe? The only piece that could somewhat reach the king is the bishop, but that's not a real attack. So, the king is definitely safe in this situation. Then you go to your next valuable piece, which would be the queen. But the queen is already off the board, so it doesn't really matter. We don't have to check the queen as we don't have one anymore. Then, what is the next most important piece? The rook. So let's check our rook. Is a rook somewhat under attack? The bishop is not attacking it, and the rook is not attacking it, and this bishop is also not attacking it. So, is the rook under attack? No. Then let's see. Then we check our knights and our bishops. Is this bishop under attack? Yes, by the rook. But the rook is more valuable, so my opponent would never take this bishop and weaken my pawn structure like this. So the bishop is safe. Is the knight safe, however? As you can see, the knight is not protected from anywhere, and the rook can easily take the knight. So if my opponent would have done this, he would have just seen this, and then just decided, well, what is the best move? Either I retreat towards there and induce the trade, or which is, by the way, a completely drawable position then because of the opposite colored bishops and the rooks. And the other way he could go is right there. But then the knight is somewhat stuck, which is not that good. So, yeah, most likely this is the best move in this situation here for my opponent. Another way to prevent yourself from blundering is to check the square you want to move to. So, in this example, I already enjoy an advantage, but my opponent has some pieces which are restricting my movements, as you can see, the bishop and the knight. Let's say I want to bring my queen into the game, and I want to move the queen one square up. A lot of players would just look somewhat at the board and then make a move, which in this scenario would be devastating as the bishop would take my queen. So if I would have moved my queen there, the position is definitely lost. But as you have learned something already in this video, you are thinking clearly. You say you want to move your queen there. Let's check this square. Is any piece attacking this square? So let's check the knight first, because the knight is the closest piece there. It's the easiest to detect. The knight is attacking these two squares, but this square is not attacked by the knight. Let's see and look around the board. The rook is not doing anything, the queen is also not attacking, and the rook as well not. But the bishop, as you can see, safeguards that square. So you never make this move, and you prevented another blunder. Another thing I want you to do is to never resign at any sort of position. And this game shows you why. It's not exactly against 1,000, but 900 is pretty close to 1,000. So I think that counts. So let's start. We have a normal opening, some trades happening, and now you can see the position is already deteriorating. Here I already made my first blunder as I took this pawn right here. My opponent definitely is not a bad player, as he's seen that this knight is taking. Then if I take back, my bishop will take the pawn and fork the king and the rook. I think that's definitely an opening trap he prepared, and I immediately fall into a trap. As you can see, the evil bar is already completely lost. I move the king, he takes the rook, and he enjoys now a really big advantage. I take another pawn, he takes a pawn, and the game is continuing. And here's actually mate on the evil bar, but obviously my opponent does not find a mate in knight. The game is still completely over for me. Some trades happening, I even lose my rook and I have no pieces left. Let's check. So my opponent takes this, I only have the pawn on the h file. So I move it up. And my opponent, as you can see, here in this position is definitely 100% winning. No one would take black to play. So as you can see, this bishop and this rook are pretty close to my king. Let's check. This rook is attacking this and this square, so my king can't move to there. And the rook is protecting the bishop, so my king can't take the bishop. And the bishop is already attacking this square, so my king has no square to move. And as you can see, this pawn is moved upwards, so this pawn can't make a move either. So if my opponent now makes a stupid move, like he does in this game, it's actually stalemate, and no one lost. And I actually, well, I got -1 ELO because I'm significantly higher than my opponent, but that's another topic. So never ever quit a game, as a lot of opponents don't know how to finish the game properly. Another thing I want you to remember is to always castle quickly, as this will save you a lot of games. Here's why. We have a basic e45 opening at our hands. My opponent is already bringing out his queen. I defend the pawn with the knight, and my opponent is going out with the bishop. And here I realized that the bishop and the queen both attack this weak pawn on f7. So I need to defend the pawn, but instead of just, for example, bringing my queen out, no, I move the knight to this square, which is already a bad move, as you can see from the evil bar. My opponent continues developing, and so do I. And now I immediately blundered, and my opponent is attacking, or is taking with the bishop. I can't take back, as this would be mate then. So I defend the mate, and I get attacked and defend the mate again. Fast forward, the game is still completely lost for me, and my opponent is even able to get this nice sacrifice onto me, as this bishop is taking this pawn is preventing. So either the king moves to the square, which is already made in one, as you can see, or I take back with the queen, which I do in this scenario actually, and then he takes my rook. I have to move with the king, and he's again attacking and threatening again some nasty stuff. I take finally, and the game is completely over. And I guess, you heard my tip already, you know why I lost this game. So let's look at an alternative game in which I castle quickly. So we still have our basic opening with e45. My opponent still brings his queen out, I defend with the knight, and my opponent takes with the bishop. Now you can see both of these pieces still attack my pawn. But what do? I see that both of these pieces attack my pawn, and I immediately counterattack with the queen with this pawn move. So my opponent has to go back, and I can bring my bishop out. Let's say my opponent continues developing, and so do I, and I immediately castle, and the position, as you can see, is completely equal with a slight advantage for black already. So the game is completely fine, and I do not lose this game. The last tip I want to give you is to always go for a ladder mate. Let's see how my opponent in this game executes that perfectly. As you can see, my opponent is already winning, as he's in a rook and rook with rook and bishop endgame, which is obviously a win for the rook and rook player. We have a lot of shuffling there, I get a lot of checks, and as you can see, the situation is completely over, as my opponent takes the bishop, it's now 2 versus 1 rook, and I finally lose the pawn, and we go down deeper and deeper. So my opponent already prepares, as he moved his rook to this side, he will later move his rook to this side and then come down both sides and immediately checkmate me. So I try to prevent this and checking him. So, and now as you can see, my opponent is already completely winning as there's mate on the evil bar. My opponent now moves his rook to the square here, preparing the checkmate. What I do in this situation is to check my opponent's king. My opponent attacks my rook, and I do the fatal blunder that I move my rook down to there, which is an immediate checkmate. So as you can see, a ladder mate is really safe. There's basically no drawing possibility, and it's fairly easy to execute. So I would suggest you, if the situation allows it, always go for the ladder checkmate. Here's a quick conclusion on everything you learned today. Firstly, you learned to avoid blundering by checking your pieces and the square you want to move to. You learned to never resign, you learned to castle quickly, and you learned to go for ladder mates. If you implement these 4 things into your game, then I'm sure you will reach 1000 ELO soon. I hope this video was valuable for you. If you learned something in this video, please give it a like and feel free to ask any kind of question in the comments. Subscribe right now if you want to see more of this kind of content. Have a great day. Bye.